The mind that takes is called love. The mind that lets go is called compassion. Just think about that for a second. We usually treat love and compassion like they are, the exact same thing.
Right, like synonyms you'd find stamped inside a generic greeting card.
Exactly. But today, we are diving into a collection of materials that, well, flips that entire assumption inside out. So welcome to this deep dive. Today we have a really fascinating stack of sources, mostly a collection of essays and modern translations of ancient Buddhist philosophy.
And they are incredibly relevant.
Yeah, they really are. They all zero in on human relationships, how we mentally frame our emotions, and honestly, the absolute root of our emotional pain. Our mission today is to unpack the profound difference between love, which this philosophy argues could actually trap and bind us, and compassion, which frees us.
Which is a huge paradigm shift.
It is.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we want to help you navigate those incredibly heavy, complicated feelings of attachment, dependency, and loss that, every single one of us deals with.
It is a remarkable collection of ideas to sift through. What immediately jumps out to me is how these concepts, despite being, thousands of years old, act as a perfect diagnostic manual for the modern anxieties we experience today.
Right, because things haven't exactly gotten less complicated.
Not at all. We live in an era where we are hyper-connected digitally, yet we often feel deeply insecure and frantic in our actual bonds with others. This philosophy doesn't just offer abstract pie-in-the-sky ideas. It provides a highly structural, psychological breakdown of exactly why our hearts feel so heavy when we deal with other people, and crucially, what we can actually do to untangle those knots.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the first major insight we encounter, honestly, well, it's stunned a little bit to read.
Yeah, it really holds up a mirror.
It forces you to look in the mirror. We're looking at how early, warm feelings of love, like that initial rush when you really care about someone, can subtly morph into an urge to control them. There's a term introduced here, ayoku, which roughly translates to lust or attachment.
Right, ayoku.
And it describes this slippery slope where you start out simply wanting a person to be happy, but slowly, almost invisibly, it mutates. You start wanting them to be happy with you, or you want them to act a certain way or say certain things so that you feel secure.
You are hitting on the exact mechanism that causes so much friction in relationships. From a psychological standpoint, our brains are constantly seeking safety and predictability,
Oh, totally.
So when we find someone who makes us feel good, our brain essentially flags them as a survival resource. And this philosophy takes that concept even further with another term, which is katsuai.
Katsuai, right.
Yeah, we can translate this as craving or thirsting love. It compares this specific type of love to a person wandering through a desert, deeply dehydrated, desperately seeking water.
And when you are that thirsty, you aren't appreciating the water for what it is. You are just trying to survive.
That is the core issue right there. Yeah. When a person is driven by this craving love, it literally does not matter how much affection, attention, or reassurance they are given by their partner or their friend.
The thirst is never quenched.
Never. In fact, the very act of seeking it out often makes the craving grow stronger and more urgent. You build up a tolerance to their reassurance, so you constantly need more of it just to feel a baseline of, okay.
I was thinking about this like being stranded out at sea and drinking ocean water.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, because you're surrounded by what looks like exactly what you need to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So you take a huge drink, but the salt water actually dehydrates your cells further. The more you drink, the thirstier and more panicked you get.
Exactly.
And the real aha moment for me was looking at our modern habits. When we feel that constant buzzing anxiety in a relationship, when we are endlessly checking our phones, waiting for a text back, or needing constant verbal validation, it's often because our version of love in that moment is secretly a desire to fill our own internal void.
Yes.
It's not actually about the other person. We are using them as an emotional thermostat and getting angry when they don't regulate our temperature.
The philosophy deliberately shifts the focus inward there, which is, it's deeply uncomfortable, but totally necessary. When we are caught in that cycle of anxiety, our default instinct is to blame the other person for our distress, right?
Right. We say if they just texted me more.
Exactly. We convince ourselves if they just texted me more or if they just showed more affection, I would feel safe. But the Buddhist perspective argues that the problem isn't the supply of affection. It's the nature of the craving itself.
The endless loop.
The endless loop of thirst. Recognizing this is the crucial first step. It requires pausing in those moments of panic and asking yourself, am I actually loving this person right now, or am I just desperately trying not to feel empty?
Wow. But that creates a really intense logical follow-up. If I am using this person as my emotional thermostat, if so much of what we call love is actually this craving, this dependency, what happens when the thermostat breaks?
When you lose them.
Right. What happens when the person is suddenly gone?
That brings us to the concept of Abitsuriku. This addresses the agonizing pain of separation from loved ones, or even, our pets.
Yeah.
Culturally, society usually tells us that if you are absolutely leveled by grief, if you are experiencing earth-shattering, debilitating pain, it is simply proof of how deep and pure your love was. It's almost romanticized.
Yeah, we wear it like a badge of honor sometimes.
Exactly. But the Buddhist framework offers a very different angle. It suggests that massive structural pain is also a measure of massive attachment and dependency.
I have to play devil's advocate for a second on behalf of everyone listening, because my initial reaction to that was, well, a lot of pushback.
That makes sense.
Like, wait, so if I am absolutely devastated about losing my dog, or I'm going through a horrible, life-altering breakup, is this philosophy really saying I'm just being selfish? Because that feels incredibly harsh. It feels like it's invalidating the love entirely.
It is a very natural reaction to feel defensive there. We are very protective of our grief. But if we connect this to the broader picture being drawn, it steps away from moral judgment entirely.
Okay, so it's not a judgment.
Not at all. The philosophy isn't calling you selfish, and it certainly isn't denying the reality of your love or telling you to just forget the person. What it is doing is clarifying the anatomy of that crushing pain. It's pointing out that the specific feeling of your entire world collapsing doesn't just come from missing them. It comes from losing a foundational pillar of your own identity.
Ah, okay, so it's like a load-bearing wall in the house of he just got knocked down.
Exactly.
A devastation isn't just that the wall is gone, it's that the roof is caving in on my head, and I literally don't know how to stand up or navigate my own life without them.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. You relied on their presence to feel normal, to feel safe, to structure your daily habits. Your brain physically mapped its environment with them at the center. The pain acts as a mirror. If we are brave enough to look into it, it shows us exactly how heavily we leaned on them for our own stability.
That's hard to look at.
It is, but this is actually where the philosophy becomes incredibly hopeful.
How so? Because realizing I was heavily dependent doesn't immediately sound hopeful.
It's hopeful because it separates the love from the dependency. It suggests that if you can recognize that a significant portion of your agony is rooted in your own attachment, your need for them to regulate your life, you can start to process the grief differently.
Oh, I see.
Letting go of the attachment does not mean letting go of the love. In fact, letting go of the attachment is what eases the intense suffering, which then allows the pure love and the fond memories to remain intact. You stop lamenting what you have lost for your own survival, and you start appreciating the time you simply got to share.
Wow. That actually completely takes the guilt out of moving on. Because moving on just means releasing the dependency, the structural need for them. It doesn't mean deleting the love.
It completely redefines what healing looks like.
But wait, if my dependency is what causes my pain when I lose someone, isn't that just as true when things are going well?
How do you mean?
Like, even when I'm actively giving them love, isn't there often a selfish dependency happening there too?
Oh, absolutely. We are getting into the concept of the hidden strings now. The essays we reviewed point out that giving truly unconditionally is exceptionally rare for human beings.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
Evolutionarily, we are wired for reciprocal altruism. When we give our time, our energy, or our affection, we usually harbor subconscious expectations. We want gratitude. We want to feel needed. We want the other person to recognize our sacrifice and validate our worth.
We want the receipt.
The receipt, yes.
We hand them a beautifully wrapped gift, or we spend all day helping them move, and we are mentally waiting for the receipt that says, I am a good person and you owe me.
That underlying psychology is completely normal. But the philosophy warns that when these hidden desires for a receipt get too strong, our so-called giving mutates. It actually turns into a chain that binds the other person.
Oof, yeah.
Think about a time you felt suffocated by someone who was constantly doing things for you, but you could tell they were keeping an emotional ledger. It doesn't feel like a gift, it feels like a transaction you never agreed to. And this is the exact moment where the teachings introduce the true alternative to all of this craving and taking. They introduce jihi, which translates to compassion.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the fundamental difference here.
Yeah.
If the kind of love we've been talking about is essentially pulling someone toward me to stabilize my own life, compassion must be the opposite, right? They must be pushing them away.
You're very close. It's not about pushing them away in a negative sense, but rather pushing them toward their own relief. Unlike binding love, which constantly tries to secure the person for your own comfort, compassion is the pure, unadulterated desire to gently remove their suffering without needing a single thing in return.
Not even a thank you.
Not even a thank you. The philosophy differentiates between two levels of this to make it accessible. There is shojihi, which is small compassion. This is our natural, limited human empathy. It's the compassion we easily feel for our immediate family, our close friends, or maybe a stray dog we see shivering on our street.
Right, it's the compassion that has a radius.
Yeah.
It only extends so far before our brains just stop caring because we just don't have the energy.
Exactly. It's bound by our biology. Contrasting that is deijihi, or great compassion. This is the boundless, infinite empathy for all existence, often associated with the Buddha's mind.
Which sounds exhausting.
It does. But what's really reassuring about these texts is that they don't demand you suddenly achieve great compassion by next Tuesday. They explicitly note that as flawed humans, starting with small compassion is the only realistic path. The goal isn't immediate glowing perfection. The goal is just to slowly, consciously expand that radius over the course of your lifetime.
See, this brings up a really interesting paradox for me. The idea that true giving, like true compassion, means your internal peace isn't destroyed if the other person completely forgets to say thank you.
Right.
Because if your only goal was just to push them toward relief, and they are relieved, your job is done. You don't need the applause to feel whole. But that makes me wonder, if I just run around having total unbridled compassion for everyone, if my only setting is relieve everyone's suffering constantly, I win, right? No more pain for me, no more pain for them.
You would logically think so, but the Buddhist perspective explains why acting purely on raw compassion is actually a recipe for total disaster.
Wait, really?
Yes, and this is one of the most nuanced psychological points in the entire philosophy. Compassion without a concept called shy, which translates to wisdom, can be deeply destructive.
Wow.
We have all experienced this, either on the giving or receiving end. Think about a time you tried to help someone going through a major crisis. You had nothing but good intentions, you were overflowing with compassion and wanted to take their pain away, but you ended up saying the exact wrong thing.
Oh, I've definitely done that.
Or you swooped in and tried to fix a problem they really needed to solve themselves, and you ended up making them feel incompetent or overwhelmed.
I'm picturing seeing someone drowning in a lake. You are so full of compassion you want to save them so badly that you sprint to the dock and aggressively hurl a heavy wooden life preserver directly at their head.
Yes.
You wanted to save them,
Yeah.
but you just gave them a concussion because you didn't actually look at where they were in the water or assess what kind of help they needed in that specific second. You were totally blinded by your own need to be the helper.
That is a phenomenal visualization. The heavy life preserver being thrown is pure, unadulterated compassion, but hitting them in the head with it. That is the lack of wisdom. And often, as you pointed out, the lack of wisdom happens because our ego hijacks the compassion. We want to be the hero who saves them rather than the quiet support they actually need.
The ego gets in the way.
It does. The philosophy presents this as a vital, non-negotiable symbiosis. Compassion without wisdom just spins its wheels and causes active damage. You become an overwhelming force in someone else's life. But on the flip side, wisdom without compassion is cold, clinical, and detached.
Right.
You might see exactly why someone is drowning, but you don't care enough to toss the preserver. You really need both working in tandem.
So how do we actually cultivate this wisdom, this chi? Because honestly, it sounds like an impossibly high standard to reach, especially when emotions are running hot.
It is less about achieving a mystical state of being and more about a mechanical shift in how you operate. The sources ground wisdom, very practically. It is the daily, deliberate practice of slowing down. It is observing the other person's actual pace rather than imposing your own timeline for their healing.
Meeting them where they are.
Yes, it's about paying attention to their context, realizing that the advice that worked for you might be toxic for them. And crucially, it is the willingness to check your ego and learn from your past missteps. True wisdom is throwing the life preserver, realizing you missed, and adjusting your aim the next time instead of blaming the drowning person for not catching it.
I love that. So what does this all mean for us on a random Tuesday morning? Like, how do we actually practice this balanced compassion and wisdom in our messy, stressful, very human daily lives? Because this all sounds beautiful in theory, but you listening to this right now probably have a chaotic inbox complicated family dynamics, and a million attachments running through your head. We need something more practical than just, be wiser.
The philosophy offers a highly practical framework for everyday life called Baku Yoraku. It's a two-part daily practice that functions almost like a cognitive reset.
Okay, Baku Yoraku.
Baku means removing suffering, and Yoraku means giving joy. Let's look at the mechanics of Baku first. When it comes to helping others, removing suffering absolutely does not mean rushing in with quick fixes or loud, toxic positivity pep talks. Often, Baku is simply quiet, patient presence.
Just being there.
Just being there. It is having the wisdom to just sit with someone in their pain without trying to force them out of it before their brain is ready to process it.
Just being a safe container where they don't have to perform or pretend they are okay for your benefit.
Precisely. And importantly, Baku applies to how we treat ourselves as well. For our own minds, removing suffering means gently untangling our own attachments to past events. It doesn't mean forcing yourself to deny that bad things happened. It means recognizing when your brain is stuck in an excessive rumination loop about a past hurt and consciously deciding to loosen your grip on that specific narrative.
That makes a lot of sense. And then there's the second part, Yoraku, giving joy. I really appreciate how the text frames this because it specifically clarifies that this is not about grand, expensive gestures.
No, not at all.
You don't have to buy someone a car or book a luxury vacation to practice Yoraku. It's about tiny, intentional interruptions to the daily grind. Sharing a small, genuine compliment with a coworker, talking about a shared interest with a friend to break up their stress, or honestly, just deliberately making the time to let your own mind relax. Sitting with a cup of coffee, looking out the window, and giving yourself 5 minutes where you aren't trying to achieve anything. That is practicing Yoraku for yourself.
It elevates what we often dismiss as basic self-care. It frames these small acts as cognitive resets that literally interrupt the neural loops of attachment and anxiety. The overarching message here is very clear. This philosophy isn't reserved for monks meditating in silent isolation on a mountain. It is a highly practical toolkit for anyone trying to ease the friction in their own mind and in their relationships. By combining Baku, which is the removal of suffering through gentle presence and releasing attachment, with Yoraku, the cultivation of small joys, we actively practice that delicate balance of compassion and wisdom.
It creates a completely different metric for success in how we relate to people. It's no longer about how much can I get this person to prove they love me and need me? The metric becomes how well can I observe their actual needs and how gently can I support them without making it about me?
If we synthesize all the moving parts we've explored from these translations, a really profound picture emerges. Love, in the way we commonly practice it as a craving, a dependency, an attachment, and compassion, look incredibly similar on the surface, but they walk in opposite directions.
Completely opposite.
Unchecked craving and dependency cause our deepest, most structural pains. They turn our relationships into desperate attempts to fill our own internal voids. But by cultivating small compassion paired with observant wisdom, we finally step off that exhausting treadmill. We can actually ease the suffering of those around us, and ultimately, by letting go of our tightest, most panicked grips, we ease our own suffering too.
Which brings us right back to the quote we started with. The mind that takes, the mind that clings, is love. The mind that lets go is compassion. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive and for taking the time to explore such a challenging but rewarding framework for how we treat each other and how we treat ourselves.
It's been a great conversation.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the hidden traps of craving love and the psychology of our own grief to the quiet, egoless power of simply being present with someone's pain. We've learned today from these ancient perspectives that our deepest pain so often comes from how tightly we grip the things and the people we care about.
We hold on too tight.
We squeeze so hard trying to keep ourselves safe that we end up hurting ourselves and suffocating the person we are holding on to. So as you go about the rest of your day, I'm going to leave you with a question to mull over. Ask yourself, what is one relationship or even one specific situation in your life right now that might actually bloom if you just chose to loosen your grip?